hey, a big thanks for watching this episode. I've really enjoyed putting together these cinematic episodes lately, and I really hope you guys are enjoying watching them too. So I'm briefly going to go over some behind the scenes stuff, talk about the gear I use, the editing equipment, and the kind of planning phase which goes into creating episodes like this. Also, all of the photos you've seen in this episode were edited using my preset pack. The link to that is down below in the description. Okay, so when it comes to these cinematic episodes, I haven't really been storyboarding them or planning them out in that way. Instead, when I go out to do street photography, I just make sure to also capture video of the scenes. And I approach scenes I record in the same way I approach scenes I do street photography of. So I'm looking for interesting scenes, interesting subjects, and then I'll go up and record them. So it's more about capturing lots of scenes and lots of interesting moments, and then crafting those scenes into a cinematic episode when I get back home to edit. Okay, so as for the gear I used to film this episode, all of the footage was filmed on the Fujifilm X-T4 alongside the 16-55mm f2.8. Now this is probably my favorite travel setup because it's so easy to switch between taking photos and then going into film and video. All of this can be done at a flick of a switch, so it's almost like having two camera bodies with you, but just by flicking the switch you're going from photography mode into video. And best of all, when I switch into video mode, it's remembering all of my video settings. Now I've done an episode on this where I get into a bit more detail on how I set up my Fujifilm X-T4 for travel and how I'm switching between photography and video on the go. I'll drop a link to that down below in the description. The X-T4 has pretty good image stabilization, so filming things where I'm just standing there statically isn't an issue. Whereas if I'm walking, and there are one or two walking scenes in this episode, you can see it's kind of moving around a bit. But the specific scenes I used, I did like them because they kind of had that documentary film type shake to them. But normally when I'm filming with the X-T4, I do refrain from walking because it can just get too choppy and way too jittery and shaky to fix and post afterwards. As for things like gimbals, I have previously used them and I sometimes use them for professional work, but I do prefer traveling light. And for those of you who travel with gimbals, you probably know these things are really difficult to travel with. The boxes are massive, carrying them is kind of cumbersome, and they are pretty heavy as well. Something I do always like to focus on is bringing some movement into the frame, even if I'm not moving myself. So I make sure to kind of film the subjects when they're moving or doing something really interesting, or I like to film from a boat or a bus or a taxi which is moving, and that way I can kind of get that moving footage without me having to move myself. Unfortunately, I didn't have an ND filter with me, so I was unable to use Fujifilm F-Log. So Fujifilm's F-Log has a base ISO rate of 640, and this means if you're shooting in daytime, it's really easy to blow out your highlights. So what I done was I shot the whole thing in a Turner, base ISO 100, and I made sure my f-stop was f16 and above, which isn't ideal. In future episodes I will be picking up an ND filter so that I can get a bit more creative with my shots, and also it gives me a lot more freedom in editing afterwards. Also, all of the audio, the sound effects, that was all captured on the X-T4's internal camera. If you haven't already, I really do recommend watching the cinematic part of this episode with headphones on, because there's lots of small kind of sound effects and kind of those sounds of Istanbul which I put into the episode, which don't always come across in laptop or phone speakers. Instead, if you do have some AirPods or some headphones, stick those on and kind of listen to it again and tell me what you think in the comments below. All of the editing in this episode was done in Final Cut. I grade all my footage from scratch. I know a lot of you guys have been asking me for an episode where I go through my grading process. I don't feel like I'm fully confident enough to release a LUT pack or really start kind of teaching you guys how to grade. Hopefully towards the end of this year though, I'll be a bit more confident with film grading and editing to the point where I can start creating some episodes for you and kind of help you guys also edit your own footage. I think for future episodes, I like to kind of storyboard them a bit and really plan it out in a bit more detail before I go out to film. So for an episode I'm going to do here in London, I think I'm going to kind of storyboard the whole thing and really plan it out, and that way the episode should have a bit more of a clearer storyline to it or a clearer theme to it going all the way through. But that should be coming out in the near future. I haven't begun work on that, but I will be doing so probably in the next month or two. Probably when the more moody or rainy weather comes into London. At the moment, it's ridiculously hot. It's always sunny. Not really the conditions I enjoy shooting in. So I probably will plan the episode out in these months, and then when the rainy season comes into London, I will film the episode. So yeah, that just about wraps up today's episode. A huge thanks for watching and supporting this channel. If you haven't already, please do hit that thumbs up button. It really helps with that YouTube algorithm. And if you haven't already, please do subscribe. I drop photography episodes pretty much every single week on this channel. But as I said, a huge thanks for watching this episode and supporting this channel. I'll catch you in the next one.